Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Simplifying Signatures and Submittals with Bluebeam Revu webinar. We are very excited to be here today with AIA Miami, and Ari's going to be giving us this awesome presentation today, so we're very excited for that. Just some quick logistics to get out of the way. Ari, if you can jump to that next slide. Perfect. So all attendees will be muted throughout this presentation. Please do go ahead and send us your questions via the questions box or the chat box through the presentation, and we will be answering those at the very end. The webcast will be recorded for future viewing. You can find that both on our website and on our YouTube channel a little bit later on this afternoon. Bluebeam training is available. You can contact us for more information using the contact info below on this slide. And I'm going to say it early. I'm sure I'm going to mention it a couple more times. Please do submit your AIA numbers via the questions box or the chat box as soon as possible. Your AIA number and your name as well as it's connected to your AIA number, so that we can begin collecting those for your continuing education credits. If we don't receive those, we cannot give you that credit. So do please send those out as soon as possible. And last but not least, any questions, concerns, anything of that nature, you can give us a call at 305-445-6480 or email us at info@ddscad.com. All right, so without further ado, Ari, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you very much, Alan. Hi, everybody. I'm Ari once again. I'm a Bluebeam certified instructor and AEC technical specialist with digital drafting systems. Let's get into the heart of why we're here today. What are we going to be learning in terms of signatures and submittals, of course? The topics here are going to be done in roughly this order. We're going to be learning about flattening and what it means to use quick flattening and the flattened dialog. We'll learn about security and how security should be set before signing, along with different kinds of authentication that also secures our signature. So we'll talk about second-party authentication and, of course, third-party authentication. We'll also learn about customizing the appearance of our signature, along with what happens if a change was made after signing, whether it was you creating a markup or somebody else doing something similar. Can you view the original version of a PDF, and can you make sure that it's safe and secure and that it really can't be changed by anyone? We're going to learn how that works with Click to View this version. Then we'll talk about batch signatures, how we can sign multiple documents and pages all at once pretty quickly, and some best practices and recommendations as we go along. So with that, let me switch into Bluebeam Revu and let me start talking about flattening. So you've been working hard on a project for maybe a few months, maybe a couple of years or even longer, and now you're ready to submit. But you have a lot of markups that you've made over time. Maybe you have a PDF that you're working in Bluebeam Studio sessions on, and then you brought it out and you have all of these floating markups, whether it's your own markups or other people's markups. What's important is that these markups are floating here. So other PDF programs that don't have the same kinds of markup tools, such as the Cloud Plus tool in Bluebeam Revu, being basically proprietary to this program and not in any other PDF program that I'm aware of, tools like this will not necessarily be viewed properly in those other PDF programs. There may be some compatibility issues, and the markup itself will either disappear or even just become a bit of a box. It'll be interesting how it looks. It's a little bit different for every single PDF program. To avoid that, we use flattening. So one way to do it is you can take your hand tool down here and switch it to the select tool. And now we can just select multiple markups all at once. This isn't really, related, but indirectly it is. Now that we have some markups selected, I can right-click on any of the markups, and the flatten option is right here. I like to call this quick flattening because once we do this, the action is essentially done. If a markup was part of a legend, the legend has to rebuild itself because that markup doesn't exist anymore. When a markup is flattened, it's not really a markup anymore. It's now just assets and pixels with some smart data, if it was initially vector data, now stuck to the screen, essentially. So I can't select it anymore. I can't click on it anymore. And if I save my file, this is essentially permanent. So I'm just going to undo what I've done. Now the markups are unflattened. I can click them again, and I can select them again. So that's quick flattening. Another way to flatten is to use the flatten dialog. You can use a shortcut at the top of your screen, or you can go to Document, and flatten is at the bottom, along with unflatten. And you'll notice that I customized and added this button to my tools. So I customized my tools in order to get that right there. So the flatten dialog can now be accessed like this. This is much more sophisticated. This allows us to add multiple files, choose what kinds of markups are going to be flattened or not. You can select the type, box right here to uncheck or check all of them. And then you can choose whether you're flattening all markups or filtered ones or just currently selected ones, for example. Or excuse me, if you want to exclude filtered ones. And at the bottom here, we can allow for markup recovery, which allows for unflattening. And that same unflattened button can essentially be found right here in this dialog. If you're going to submit to municipality, I do not recommend allowing markup recovery. I recommend that you uncheck it and not allow anyone to be able to unflatten your markups, just in case. A digital signature will help to ensure that your markups are essentially where they are and they'll stay put. But just in case, you don't need to allow people to unflatten your markups if you're going to be submitting to an official municipality with a digital signature. So that's how flattening works in a nutshell. Let's go back to our topics. Security is another thing that we like to do before signing. So there's a little bit of prep that we can do before signing, and that's very important because you cannot do a lot of things after you sign. A lot of aspects of the document will be locked out to you. So security can be found by going to the document dropdown and then clicking on security. A little shortcut to get there as well is there's this third bar down here that has this button right here. And we can click this and we can go into show document properties. And this allows us to actually access security in this way. So there's many different ways of getting to the same place. So here in security, you can see that everything on this PDF is allowed. By default, that's how all PDFs are. I can initially change my permissions, and I can already set some security permissions that are separate from my signature. Not only can I require a password to open the PDF, but of course I can require one to even print copies, physical copies of a PDF, to be able to even copy markups and even make any changes to the document at all. And I can choose what settings are going to be turned on or off right here. So that's essentially how security works. You guys can set that up. Just make sure you put in your master password, verify it, and whatever settings you have here that are on or off after you save, that will be solidified, and all of the settings here for your document will change. So they'll either be allowed or restricted depending on what settings you've chosen. That's security. Let's go back over here, and yes, third-party authentication. Before signing to a municipality or signing the PDF and submitting it to a municipality, you may want to consider whether or not they require third-party authentication. While third-party authentication is not required in the state of Florida, some municipalities do require it, and their rules essentially are similar to the federal rules and to the state rules. So with that in mind, I'm going to show you the difference between the two. Now it's time to essentially sign our PDF. When signing the PDF for the first time, you're not going to have convenient signature fields like I've placed right here, and I have a couple for stamps here and here. Instead, I'm going to make it from scratch, just like you guys would. You can go to your signatures panel, little ink pen icon right here. And right now there are no signatures. I can tell because the arrow to the left of the word signatures is facing down. If this arrow was facing to the right, I don't know if there are signatures here because right now that data would be collapsed and it'll display itself once you have that arrow facing down. So sometimes people accidentally collapse or they hide all the data here. So it's good to make sure that your arrows are facing down next to groupings like this. Then in the signatures part up here, we can essentially choose between 4 different options. The first 3 have to do with actually signing, and the fourth one allows us to essentially refresh our signatures to establish a connection between the signature itself and our computers and to make sure that everything is valid. Those signature certificates are very, very important. So the first button looks like a hand, a little pencil. We can use this to very quickly create a signature field and sign. You may have noticed actually that my signature fields already on the page have become a little darker than usual. If I'm not using this tool, they're actually light. When they're light blue, we're essentially in markup mode, the regular default mode of Bluebeam Revu. And when you're accessing a signature field in this mode, you can't really right click on them. If you do, the field goes invisible, but it's still there with the dotted lines all around it. And funnily enough, if you double click with the right mouse button, let's see, did that work? No, I thought that worked for a second. If you right click, nothing really happens. And if you left click, then you're thrust into the signature dialog. So basically in markup mode, you can only use a signature field or a form field. You cannot modify them or delete them or copy them. But if I was to make another signature field, those fields are now dark blue. Now I can right click on them and I have a lot of options like copying, even multiplying, a new feature in Review 21, and deleting, of course. So you need to go into what's called form mode in order to do this. You can either try to create a form field, which doesn't really have 100% great results because you can't really select your grips. You can see that whenever I select this markup, the grips pop up for just a split second and then they go away. That's because the program wants you to create your signature field first before modifying another one. Instead, you can actually go to your forms panel on the left side and you can select different form fields. You can see I have a couple in the corner right up here, and signature fields. A little tip is if you're all zoomed out all the way like this, if you select a form field, it doesn't really navigate there. So just zoom in somewhere on your PDF, and now the program will navigate there. It won't center it on your screen. It'll leave a little bit of a white gap on the edges and the closest edge that it was to not being visible. So a little interesting on how that works, but still works decently. Here is the other fields, and you can see now that those yellow grips, when I select these fields from the Forms tab, they are now showing themselves. By default, this Forms tab is not visible, and you need to have Review complete in order to see it to begin with. To access it, you can right-click below any of your side panels and mouse over Show, and you'll see all the different side panels that may or may not be visible. I know another one that's not visible is sometimes links, so you guys can turn that on if you want. I have mine on the right side right here. Moving on, we're going to go back to the signatures panel. Finally, we're going to make our signature field. I'm going to use the first tool because this one, like I mentioned earlier, allows us to create these very quickly. So now I'm just going to make a nice one for a stamp. Let's make it about that big. And immediately the signature dialog opens. The issue with this is if I needed to make a change or cancel signing, if I close out of this, I would never know how to delete the signature field because right-clicking doesn't work. That's why I like to use the second tool, because not only can we create a signature field with it, but we can create more than one. And I can create them infinitely without having to select the tool multiple times because I'm using reuse markup tools. It's a button that can be found right down here in our status bar. This bar is not on by default. So if we go to tools and mouse over toolbars, you guys can also turn on your status bars. And then you'll be able to have access to reuse markup tools right here. One of my favorite toggles. So I'm just going to get rid of this extra signature field. And now I have this one right here. I can select it. Right now, because I'm trying to create another one, it's hard to manipulate the grips. The grips are not really there. So I'm just going to press escape, quickly go into signature 5, which is the last one. And I can just make it a little bit larger. There we go. Now you guys can see the workflow, making some small customizations to your signatures. So the second tool, like I mentioned, you can create multiple. And the third one is just a button that you just click. This is essentially called certification. This is very similar to the signature dialog in that you can choose only one signature type, not two. You're allowed to then see the changes permitted after document certification, which allows us to either say nothing can be changed. You are allowing other people to fill in existing forms and digitally sign things. That could be useful. And you can allow people to create some markups if you want them to on this certified document. Now, certifying like this, clicking this button by itself and being in this dialog field is what I like to call certifying in the background. There will be no visual indicator that the document is certified unless you go to the signature panel, but the PDF will not have any kind of stamp or signature. This is just document certification. Now you can include some optional information here. We're going to talk about that very soon when we go back to the signature dialog. I'm going to go back there now since document certification is a little bit silly by itself, but we can actually combine our signature and document certification when we just click on any signature field. And now you can see that under signature type, we have the option of choosing a regular digital signature or document certification, which allows them to be combined together because now our appearance section in the bottom of this panel is now available to us. But even with document certification selected, I can still have an appearance and still display my signature on the PDF itself. Now, the real issue with document certification is that even though you may allow people to fill in forms and digital signatures and even create markups, there are still limitations that are, in my opinion, not really justified. For example, we cannot create extra signature fields after using document certification. All signature fields need to be made prior to doing that. If you use a regular digital signature, other people can create more signature fields and sign after you on the same PDF. And I have a lot of clients that they have 5 or 10 different people or companies in the chain of design, and they need to make sure that everybody can sign. They don't know exactly how many people are going to sign, but whoever needs to is able to. And that's where a digital signature is the preferred type, and you don't really need document certification. We talked earlier about click to view this version, and I'm now going to get into that right after I just show you guys some basic stuff about customizing the appearance of your signature. So let's get into all that right now. So here at the top, let's make sure that our digital ID is correct. Looks like I have 2. I wonder what the difference is between these 2. Let's try the one without my middle name and with my first name a little shorter. You know, I'm Ari or Ariel, whatever you prefer. And if I was to create a new digital ID right here, then I can just select create digital ID file and start inputting data. I mean, as long as I know anybody's name or email address, I can just set up a password and I can just create a second party signature with their credentials. And if no one really checked, no one would know whether or not I signed in behalf of Alan, for example, instead of myself. So this is what second party authentication means, that basically the program itself is authenticating your signature. The first party is whoever signs, so that would be me in this case. And that's it. So it's really hard to verify someone's identity when you use second party authentication. But with third party authentication, you actually get another company to verify your validity, and only you know certain credentials and passwords to use that signature. First, I'm going to demonstrate a second party signature, and then I'm going to do a third one. One of the key differences is that with a second party signature, the password field must be filled in and you must log in order to start signing and customizing your signature. Whereas a third party signature has a password field that's typically grayed out and your appearance is immediately visible at the bottom. And that's essentially because the third party companies will give you a specialized password insert dialog that's associated with your signature right as you sign. So after I click OK and save my file, I'll be prompted. Let's go back to first party. Let's get it done really quick. Do I remember my password? I sure hope so. Uh-oh, must be a different one. Let's see if it's this one. That's okay. I'm going to demonstrate third party because it shows just more information, and I'll explain the differences between them. I haven't used my second party one in a very long time, and I'll figure out my password later. So third party authentication, check. Signature type, digital signature. The options section here is very interesting because the reason section has a drop down. You can choose some preset reasons. These reasons are also available in the batch signature tool when you use it. However, you can't customize the reason section when you're using the batch tool. You still, luckily, can customize the location and contact info sections right here, which is great. And you can still use custom text in those 2 areas when you're using the batch tool. So I recommend that when you're using the batch signature tool, if you have any legal data that you need to include with your signature that could read along the lines of, I hereby sign and seal this PDF or this document, all printed copies are invalid, and a bunch of other information. If you need to have that information there in the signature, then include it in your location or contact info. And now I'll show you how to customize the appearance so that you can get rid of extra labels that you don't need. So I'm going to go and stick with this appearance. I have multiple appearances that I can use with this dropdown. I have my fancy cursive signature. I've got a seal that I have just for demonstration purposes. And of course, I have my text-only signature. If we customize this by clicking on Edit, we can now see that I can change the name of the signature at the top. The graphic up here is important because that's going to include your name in big bold letters separate from the text itself. So if I click none, but then I turn name on here, that means that in the list of data, my name and then date will be there. I could even turn name back on in graphic and have my name there twice. Why? Well, some people like to see their name in big bold letters, and then with labels turned on, the words digitally signed by and then my name provide even more validity. But it's all redundant. So in the end, most people don't really need their name there if they have a seal, for example, in the background. So with that seal in mind, they can turn that name off and they just had the date. And the date could either be in the middle of the seal in an empty area or off to the side, along with your legal data that could be shown in the contact info section. The problem is that contact info does have a label, so we just turn that off. And now it just says contact info and date. And of course, we could keep our name here on the left side if we don't have a seal. And to see what our preview looks like, basically, so there is no data in contact info, so it doesn't show. Isn't that interesting? If you don't have any data in here, it won't show. But now it will. So that text down there is there. Labels are still off, so if I turn those back on, now it says contact info, it won't show. So we don't necessarily want those labels if we do have legal data, because those labels don't correspond with the context of the data. So we don't need them. We just have our legal text, our date, and we can or don't really need to have our name on the left side. Or of course, like I mentioned, you can go to File and you can insert any PDF or image that you want to be on the left. So you can see that now that I have that selected, this is essentially blank. So the area is being used, but right now it just has nothing there. So that's how that works. I'm going to cancel out of that. I'm going to cancel out of this to make sure that my appearance wasn't saved, but I believe that it might have been. So let me check and make sure. Yep, it was, and that's fine. I'm just going to do it exactly like that. Beautiful. All right, so now we have our data. Actually, I think that the name can be turned off since I already have it on. Perfect. So I'm ready to now sign with third-party authentication. I'm going to click OK. The program will prompt me to rename my file. When using the batch tools, it will not prompt you. So make sure that when you're using those tools, have everything ready to go. Make a copy of your working file, make that file a slightly different name, and then batch sign, and that way you don't overwrite your original. So I'm going to write _DS for digital signature. I'll replace that test that I made a long time ago. Now the program is going to start to load, but because it's third-party authenticated, something interesting happened. It was very subtle, and I could sit here all day waiting for something to happen. But if I look in my taskbar down here, I have a little program that wants me to click on it. This is asking me for my password for IdenTrust, and for my third-party authentication from IdenTrust. So let's see if I can type it in correctly. It's probably going to be something along these lines. No, actually, it'll be like this. That should be it. And now, the original file before signing was closed, and the file that was just signed is now open, so you can see the name of the file right here. And there it is. We now have all that information in this signature field. The height of the signature field doesn't really matter for text as long as the width is satisfied. So you can see how the date doesn't quite fit here. The date does, of course, forcibly include the time. You cannot turn this on or off. It's part of signatures. It's part of the legal data, so it has to be there. But yeah, there we go. That is a digital signature. I can mouse over this. It does say the signature is valid, but just in case, I'm going to refresh it by using the Validate Signatures button right here. And there we go. I can even right-click on a signature on my screen. I can clear it if I need to. And I can validate it here as well. This is another way to refresh it very quickly. I can even look at properties. In doing this, I'm now looking at a window in Windows itself, not in Bluebeam Revu. And this window is giving me some information about my signature. There are many ways to verify the third-party validation, and this is one of them. Because now the issued by section says IGCA1, and it shows my date. And typically a third-party certification like this will only last about 1 to 3 years, depending on what you've purchased. So mine is going to last until 2026. And second-party authenticated signatures that are created in Bluebeam Revu, they last for 10 years. So if you see a 10-year expiration, that is one indicator that maybe your signature is not quite good for municipalities. Now, in the details section, there's a lot of data here. The issuer here does give us some information, IGCA1, IdenTrust, so that helps a lot. A lot of this is important information that can be used to verify the validity of your signature. Luckily, none of this can be used to you have somebody else use it nefariously. But the certification path also gives us more information and tells us about 2 files that are very important that I'll talk about, I think probably now or maybe a little bit later as we go. What will happen is that with IdenTrust signatures in particular, they are using the Windows Certificate Store, and after a certain amount of time, all of our computers' operating systems have certificates like the Federal Common Policy CAG2 and the Federal Bridge CAG4 files. They will actually expire on our own computers. And when that happens, they think that these files have also expired. So we need to actually go on IdenTrust's website and install those new files onto our computer, not just to send files to people, but to receive them from other people. So I experienced this from both scenarios for the last 3-4 years. And we've been helping people to fix a very interesting issue where instead of having a green icon next to the signature field, it would be yellow. And when you expand this information, it would say signer's identity unknown. And it's so strange because on the signer's computer, typically they have no issue. But on somebody else's computer, they have a big issue where they will view the signature as invalid or essentially as unknown. And so the recipients need to install those files and the senders need to install those files because all of our operating systems have a different expiration date based on when they were actually installed on our computer. That's when those certificates start to go a little crazy. So just a little best practice for you guys. If you guys ever experience that issue, you should be one step closer to fixing it. And we have instructions to fix it. So contact us after today's presentation and we'd love to assist you. Now, I expanded my signature here to see more information. But now if I expand the area next to authority, this is showing us essentially our certification path that we saw in the previous window. So this is another way to tell whether a signature is third-party authenticated. IdenTrust provided this for me, but in the end, my name is here because I am the first party. I hosted the first party, then Bluebeam had a party, and now IdenTrust is having a party. Oh my God, I have to be careful with how much I'm drinking, right, guys? No, there's no need for any of that. Anyway, after we have all those parties, now we can send this file to other people and we should be good to go. But what if I needed to make a couple of changes after signing or somebody else made some changes? So first of all, what changes are allowed? Well, after signing, we can actually go to the document dropdown and go to security again. And initially it does say that everything has been allowed here, but with digital signatures, trying to insert pages and change the document is typically not allowed. Here we can try, and it looks like it is allowing us, but I believe if I do this, it's going to invalidate my entire PDF. Let's try it. I'm just going to try and add another page here. I think I'll just add one of these. That's fine. Open. Let's see if it works. So we're going to click OK. And it looks like it did just add a new page, but the file hasn't been signed yet. So I'm just going to sign it. By the way, sorry for this mess of a page. I was doing some tests with the auto align function with compare documents. So if you guys are having any success with it, let me know, please. All right, I just saved my file after making some changes, which was essentially to insert that page. Let's go back to signatures and look at this. Signature invalid, document altered. But shouldn't I be able to make changes to a PDF if I'm just using the regular digital signature option? The answer is not really. Another thing that seems to work initially, but will actually break your whole PDF as well, is going to edit in PDF content. If you try to use the cut, erase content tools or edit text, the program will not only break the PDF, but even if you cancel out of creating these, it's broken forever. Let me demonstrate this in a second. First, I want to look in the signatures panel to see a couple of new things that were added here. So first of all, it says click to view this version. Interesting, we were talking about that before. Then under the document has been modified, I can now see that there's a plus here. And look at that, I added a page and therefore added a bunch of hyperlinks and polygons that were already on that page. If I select one of them, it's going to go back to that page. And there it is right here. Let me see if it lets me zoom in. There we go. We can see that these clouds here are new objects. They're counted as essentially polygons that have the cloud all around them, the cloud border all around them. So look at that. All of that was added here. So every little thing that was added to a PDF, whether it was inserted as a page or even drawn as a markup, like this line right here, these are now changes that are part of the PDF. They're not going to show up until the file is saved, and the status of the signature will not refresh itself necessarily if you don't save the file. But now let's see, did my line appear there? Looks like not quite yet. Sometimes you have to actually close the file and open it again. So I'm going to try that one more time. You can see how I quickly open the file by going to my File Access tab right here, little filing cabinet. And you can see your recent section, and you can even pin categories of files right up here. So, by the way, our instructions, if you guys, I can help you guys out a little bit. Our instructions for fixing those files that could cause issues are right here. We have two sets. The first one typically works, and then the second one is used if the first one has issues. So far, we've only had to use the second set of instructions once, ever. So anyway, we can talk about that a little bit later when you guys actually need the assistance from us. Moving on, I just opened this file. It has digital signatures. Yes, I want to click yes to that. Let's see if my line is there. There it is, added line on page 8. Perfect. And if I select it, it selects the line. Beautiful. So yes, these objects and other changes you make will be reflected, especially after you save and open the file again, if it doesn't initially. And now you guys know. So this file is kind of broken because I did insert a page, which is a big no-no. Typically, adding things like markups is not a problem. It'll just add an extra PDF to the file, essentially, and duplicate the signed file. What do I mean by that? Well, when you sign a file, its size, you guys can check, will actually typically double. And that's because the signed file includes not only the cover sheet of the file that could have markups and things like that, but the original pages, just as they were right before signing, without any changes made to them at all. So it's really, really useful. Now, let me just check a couple things. If we were to try and edit some data onto here, like let's say if I wanted to remove something, I'm just going to use cut content. Let me go to page 1 and do that. Let's say I wanted to delete some text. I'm just going to do that right here and watch what happens. Because the file's been signed, now the clear signatures dialog pops up. So if I continue, I will clear the signature, but if I click cancel, it gets even worse. I clicked cancel, but if I did this in a vacuum without having inserted another page, then I would have completely broken the file as well. The icon here would also be red, and it would say that the signature is valid, the document's altered. So that's pretty bad. Now let's finally look at click to view this version and see what the PDF should look like if it didn't have any of those changes made, such as deleting this room here, which still in the end did get deleted even though I canceled it, which is very strange, isn't it? We're going to click to view this version. A new file opens at the top right here. And then I can just check this one right here. And look at that. This is actually the iteration prior to using the edit PDF content tool. So you can see Office 249 is back in business. So once again, click to view this version is available for this file. This means that there is an even cleaner version underneath this. So I'm going to click on this right here. And there we go. Look at that. Green icon, signature is valid, no changes made. Not only is Office 249 there, but in my pages section, that 8th extra page doesn't exist. While with these files, the 8th page exists. So now this file has essentially become quite large with all different kinds of iterations of the file based on the amount of changes that were made. So if you add markups, each time you do that, you're essentially making another change to that signed file. This is what ensures that your signed file is legit. Click to view this version can give you peace of mind and allow us to not worry about document certification and still still enjoy the freedom that we have to create more signature fields, for example. Now, in the click to view this version option, it is actually very locked out. If I go to document and security, first of all, I can't. And second of all, you can see how many things are grayed out. So on these versions, you can't create anything. They are basically in read-only mode. And that's a very special part of digital signatures, that they always will have the original version of a file before any changes were made. All right, fantastic. Let me close out of a couple of these guys here. Let me close out of the signed file. I'm going to open up my floor plan before we signed it. Beautiful. All right, we've covered a lot of ground so far. Let me go and check our topics and see if I'm missing anything. Oh, good. Batch signatures. And of course, we've been talking about best practices as we've been going. Let's go back and let's talk about some batch signature stuff. So we need to prepare our file before batch signing, like I mentioned. So if I was to go and use this one, it would overwrite my working file, and I probably have a lot of issues trying to clear those signatures and make some edits to my working file. So you have to be very careful. So I'm just going to use the Save As button. I've actually customized it and put it right here. But of course, you can go to File and Save As if you need to. I'm going to call this _ batch ds and then save. I've done that before. Nice. Now I'm ready to go. My working file is safe. This one has a different name. We're going to go to batch, sign and seal. If I had multiple files, no problem. I can add them here by clicking on the add button. If I am working with a municipality that requires me to separate every single page into a separate file, that's okay. I can just keep them all in one folder, and then I can add a folder, and all of those pages will come in here in alphabetical order. So that can be quite useful. I can also choose what pages I'm going to be signing. So I can just customize this to 1, 2, 3, like that. Not to be confused with 1, 2, 3. Anyway, I'm going to click on next. And now this batch signature dialog will pop up. In this dialog, we can see our PDF on the right side. And if digital signatures is turned on, then you should have some text or your signature on the upper left side. So we can see mine right here. If I mouse over it, the box goes red. Be very careful. If you mouse over the edge of this box and you click, you can accidentally resize it. And it is very difficult to size it back up and to keep things basically uniform on the X and Y axis. I don't want you guys to start stretching your signatures so that the text looks a little funky. So just be very careful when you move these to click somewhere in the center of the box so that you can just move it instead of resizing it. Now, in the digital signature section on the upper left side, we have a lot of settings that we're already very familiar with. So we can see that type shows digital signature. Of course, I can use document certification here. If I do this, it's only one or the other. We are not able to combine document certification with the batch signature tool. All this is really useful for is to certify your document in the background without a visual indicator on the PDF on many, many pages. So some people do have a use for this. For us, we don't need to. By the way, if we click on this, notice what happens to our text right here. Gone, because there is no signature. There's no visual indicator. And the appearance section is completely grayed out, blotted out, just like the arrows from the sun and all that stuff, right? What was that movie again? Anyway, in the digital ID section, you can once again see that I have my second party signature and my third party signature right here. And the appearance section is ready for us to customize. So I can choose different ones. Let's look at the seal one and see how that looks. It looks like, oh yeah, this says seal, but is it showing it? Oh, there it is. It's a little bit small. You'll notice that as you zoom in, the text associated with your signature will get larger or smaller depending on how far you zoom in and out. This is not an indicator as to how large the text will be. The ways that you can confirm that is to go to your edit for appearance. You can either have a manual font size, so mine is set to 9 right now, which should fit nicely inside of this seal, or you can set it to auto. That means that your text will resize itself based on your actual signature field. So if I make this a bit larger, like that, and you can see how non-uniform this is, so you can see I may have some distortion, but let's see if this works. Oh, yes, it does. If you hold the Shift key while clicking and holding, you can keep your X and Y axis uniform and make your signature beautiful. Now, the extra white space on the left and the right side is a bit of an issue. This has to do with either using the PDF of a seal or using the image itself. So be careful when using PDFs like I am. You'll want to actually use an image to get the exact size of your signature. It should not have all this extra space. We'll leave that there for now, of course. We're not going to worry about that right now. But if you guys do have issues, let us know. We can help you fix that. We'll convert your seal into essentially an image and just crop it with a program like Microsoft Paint and make it really nice and neat. All right, and so here everything looks good. So I'm going to place the seal right there. Very good. You can see how large the text looks, but once again, that's not a preview. We're going to see how it looks after batch signing. Another reason why you may want to make your signature fields the exact same size. You can have a template set in your title blocks for a signature field. That should help a lot if you guys are going to do that. You can make some tests on regular PDFs, on single file PDFs like we were doing earlier. All right, let's see what happens when we sign. So it does say page 1 of 7, but only 3 pages are available for me to preview. So as I switch to my different pages, you can see that the signature field is in the same spot on all 3 pages. So it's good to test it and make sure. The big reason why we test this is, what if I wanted to put my seal in a perfect 2x2 box and have it fit perfectly inside of the signature field? And I want it to be the industry standard for Florida, which is roughly 2 inches by 2 inches, if I was an architect or an engineer. Well, I can now go to my placement section and switch it from manual placement to signature field. Before doing that, I can select other signature fields, which is nice, but it doesn't really do anything. So instead, I'm going to switch to signature field. And now I believe signature 2 is that one. And you can see how it fits beautifully in there. Here are the issues with using this. If I go to page 2, there is no signature field there. Nothing exists there, and I haven't placed one there. This would mean that on all 100 pages, for example, I would have to find all 100 signature fields, select them in this fields list, which will have a little drop down and you can choose multiple. And that's really tedious. Now, the other issue is that if I just do this on one page, it should still show itself on the other pages, but it doesn't because they don't have signature fields. So to mitigate this, we can now turn the placement from manual or from signature field back to manual. Before doing so, I believe that if we turn signature 2 off, it just makes our signature go away. But let's see if manual will bring it back. It does. Beautiful. So now with that signature field turned off, which is important to turn that off first, then switching your placement back to manual, we have the benefits of having the field resized perfectly, but now I can move it and it's flexible. And let's check page 2. Something interesting happened. It arbitrarily just moved my entire signature field away from where it was. And now when I go back to page 1, it's here. Why? It's a small little bug that happens when you use these placement options. So be very careful. All you have to really do to fix this is to actually move the signature field. Notice that it's still the right size. So everything that we've wanted has been accomplished. We have it at the perfect size. We can move it here on top of a signature field or anywhere, to be honest with you. I'm just going to put it here because I know it's supposed to go here. And that's great. And don't worry, the signature fields themselves disappear after you sign. Only subsequent signature fields created after a signature actually takes place will be visible, of course, after signing. But the field needs to be signed in order for it to be visible. So I've placed my seal right here. I think I'm ready to go. Let's check page 2 though before I commit. Look at that. Beautiful. Page 2 is looking good. Page 3 has it in the right spot. And now we're ready to go. So if I click OK now, the batch signing process begins. This would also stop at 0 of 3 if I hadn't signed into IdenTrust recently. Because I did sign in recently, we're good to go. But look at this. I am now experiencing another bug. Look at the size of my signature field. It's huge. It enlarged itself and still has that extra gap on the left and the right, and it's not the right size. That has to do with me using a PDF instead of an image, so I'm going to be fixing that for future presentations. And it has to do with me using those placement options. So be very, very careful. You may want to maybe avoid them, but if you do want your signature field to be the right size, then you can definitely use them. Just be very, very careful. I'm actually going to be doing one more test while I'm with you guys, since we have a little bit of time until we get into our questions and answers section. So let's make this batch DS1. We can do some tests during the webinar, right? It'll be a little fun. And let's try to sign again with the batch tool, batch, sign and seal, pages 1 to 3. Let's go next. Let's see if the same bug occurs. So we have our signature field up here. It's a little bit crazy in terms of its size, but that's okay. I'm just going to move it into position and resize it. And sometime soon, I'm going to be fixing a couple things, but holding the shift key allows me to resize it rather nicely. So that's a big help. And for now, that should be basically close enough. And that extra white gaps on the left and the right, once again, we will fix that by using an image and not a PDF. Let's check page 2. Perfect. Much faster this time. We have no issues. Everything's in the right spot. Let's see if it keeps its size after I sign. Let's see if it keeps its position. There we go. It does. Very nice. The only issue is that the box itself is a little bit larger, but visually the signature looks great, right in its location. So be careful using those placement options. There are a couple of little bugs to avoid, but besides that, once we understand how they work, we can circumvent them and navigate them properly. All right, I think that that is good enough for now. Let me check and see what our topics are, see if I missed anything. No, I think that we're good. We are basically, I think, ready for some Q&A stuff. So I think I'm going to go on and let the arena flow with questions. But before I do, we do have a resources section right here. So we have some links that you guys can check out. You guys can take a screenshot of this if you need to. The support website, the first one right here with custom libraries, is great if you want some extra tools. You can also get some really nice stamps there. So you guys can check that one out. Status.bluebeam.com is great, and you can actually subscribe to it so that you get email notifications if your region of the world is having any issues with signing into Review 21 or using Bluebeam Studio, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of different things it's going to tell you there. Portal.bluebeam.com is an older way of managing licenses for perpetual licenses. Now we go to org-admin.bluebeam.com in order to manage our subscription licenses. If you guys have any questions about that, please contact us. And you can also check out the differences between the older interface of Review 2017 and prior, and compare it to Review 2018 up to Review 21's interface. If you have any issues, you guys can check out link number D right here. That should help a lot. And then you can also go and manage your studio projects and sessions. And this website will also become prime.bluebeam.com if you have Studio Prime enabled for your email address. So that can help a lot. And finally, we're ready for questions. So do we have any questions?
We do. Before we go ahead and jump into questions, just another quick reminder for those of you who have not yet, please do go ahead and send in your AIA number and name through the questions or the chat box so that we are able to make sure that you receive your continuing education credit for being here. Very few of you so far have sent that over. So if that's something you're looking for out of today's presentation, please do send that over as soon as possible. Okay, Ari, the first one, will you be going over counts?
Oh, I wasn't planning on it, but yeah, I can go over them right now really quickly. It's a great question. The count tool can be used both in manual ways and automatic ways. The manual way is to use your count shortcut. So I have mine right here. You can also go to tools and measure, and it's right here. When you use this, you're essentially placing a symbol manually next to whatever you want to count. So if I'm counting how many grid lines I have, no problem. When you press the escape key, now you can see that if you select one of these checks, one of these counts, all of them have a little grip. The one that I selected has a yellow grip, while the other two have green grips. In properties, I can see what I'm counting right here. To automatically use the count tool, all you need to do is find an object that you want to utilize it with, and then we're going to use visual search. So typically we cover this in other presentations and training, but you know what? You guys can get a little sneak preview from me. So we're going to use the sync right here. Visual search is found with a little magnifying glass right here. You can then make sure that you're using either text or visual search. Either way works very well with the count tool because you can associate the count tool with each result. So I'm just going to use visual because it's a little bit more fun to use. We're going to use get rectangle. I'm going to use this sync right here. I want to find all the syncs on the drawing and label them and count them. So I can do that. The problem is that other syncs are rotated in different ways and they have lines going through it. And that's okay because we have a sensitivity bar that allows us to search for similar objects, not the exact same object. And we have an option that allows us to search for multiple rotations. I'm going to search just on this page. I'm going to click search. We have our results populating. And now we can see the results in this list right here. So I have 5 results. If you're zoomed in, just like we saw with form fields, then I can kind of navigate and find my results just by selecting them like this. But if I'm not zoomed in and I select these, it doesn't seem like anything happens, but things are being selected. You just can barely see them. So instead of utilizing the search results that way, The best way to do it is to then use this little box right here to select all of them, and then to use the lightning bolt to the right of it called check options. And this allows us to now set a hyperlink, mark for redaction, and of course, apply a count tool. So now I can apply that count, such as these red triangles, on all 5 syncs. In doing so, I can now open up the markups list. Let's see, markups list. Oh, this is a signed file. That's why. The markups list doesn't really exist with a signed file. That's funny. Let's go back to my original file. There we go. And essentially, ooh, I'm getting a call. Give me 1 second. Let me turn down my volume. And essentially, we can have our count tool here in the markups list, and the comment section will show us how many results there are. So it says 7 here. That's interesting. Why are there 7? Oh yeah, because I placed some extra ones, these 2 here and here. So if I wanted to, I can also right click on one of these results, and I can either split them from the overall count. I can resume the count from that whatever result I want from the last one that was created, etc. So I'm going to split this. Now this is by itself, and now I can delete it, and vice versa. I can even right click and delete this one object from the entire group. That's another way. Instead of having to split and then delete, this saves us some time by just deleting right here. And that's the count tool in about 3 minutes. That's how that works. All right. Any
Well
other
done.
questions? Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, here we have a couple more just to close off here. And again, keep those AIA numbers and names coming. Why does my signature seem verified, but other people say it isn't?
Yes. It was similar to what we were talking about earlier in regards to the federal common files eventually expiring on our computers. So even though it may look good on your computer, that's because all of our operating systems have different certificates that expire at different times based on when the operating system was created. So if you are viewing someone else's signature with that symbol that we saw, let me open up a signed file and show you guys. There we go. We'll go right here. If we see that, give me 1 second. If we see that the icon next to the signature itself is not green, but it's yellow and it says signer's identity unknown, that's because you need to download those 2 federal common files. More than likely, the signature in question is an IdenTrust one, and it uses the Windows Certificate Store. Now, from our experience, we've seen that in other programs that don't use the Windows Certificate Store, I'm not going to name names, but you guys can guess the most popular PDF program. That one uses its own certificate store. So certificates there and on that program itself seem fine, but that's because there's no connection to our computers. So our computers are really good indicators as to what exactly is going on, and Bluebeam Revu establishes a very direct connection to our computers. So that's why if you're using Bluebeam Revu to look at signed files, you're looking at the real version of the file, the most up-to-date one, not an older one that's looking at old certificate data. So if that ever happens, you guys can let us know, give us a call, and we'll provide those instructions and even walk you through the instructions to fix those files and make sure that you can view all signatures as they should be viewed.
Hey, how can I change the name in my signature?
That's a good question. So with third-party authentication, the name that you provide to that company, such as IdenTrust, it's very important that you provide your name exactly in the same casing that you want it to be viewed as. Now, another thing that you can do is create a second party signature and give it any name that you want. So if I was to make a new one from scratch, for example, I could go to Tools, Signature, and then let's see, Digital IDs, and then I would click on the plus sign right here. Here I can make my name anything I want. Now, if the question is, can I actually change the name, my name, in an existing signature? I believe the answer is just completely no. I'm going to do a little test right now. Oh, yes, it's asking me for my password. Let's see, is it an old password or a new one? We'll never know. I'll deal with that later. So the answer is no, you cannot really customize the name itself. The only thing you can do is pick up on existing name data from the signature itself, but that name data is embedded into the signature and cannot be modified for legal purposes. So if you want your name to change and you're not using third party, just make a new signature. It's free. On any PDF program that allows you to mess with digital IDs and signatures, just click on the plus sign, create one, and start again. If it's third-party authenticated and you need to change your name, you need to contact that company, such as IdenTrust, let them know, and they're going to basically send you a brand new signature from scratch. So those names cannot really be changed. They need to be set up perfectly in advance.
Perfect. Okay, I've got a couple more that have come in here. Do you recommend using global sign instead of IdenTrust for signature authentication?
Oh, it's a great question. Typically, I don't like to play sides, but there is a reason why I'm going to choose IdenTrust over Global Sign. There's two reasons. One, IdenTrust is one of the only companies that I'm aware of that will provide you with what's called the .pfx files. These files are found basically or provided by third-party companies, but a lot of them don't provide them. Global Sign and other companies only provide a USB key. If you take that USB key and plug it into Sign, and let's say you made some customizations, you added your architectural seal to the signature, it looks amazing, and then maybe you wanted to sign on another computer or you wanted to free up some space for your USB slots. So you unplug the USB. The next time you go to sign and you plug in that USB key, all of your appearance settings are deleted and there's no way to back them up. If we go to tools, signature and digital IDs, and then go to properties, or not properties, excuse me, manage appearances, I can see my appearances here, but I cannot back them up. I can only make new ones and change them and delete them. So that USB key is a big issue. That USB key is required for another PDF program that you guys can guess. Same answer as last time. And it's not necessary with Bluebeam Revu. Bluebeam Revu works very well with the actual .pfx files. They can be installed within minutes on our computer. You can have those files on multiple computers. As long as only you know the password, nobody can use them to sign except for you. But if you have to sign at home, at work, on the road, no problem. You can have those files, put them on a USB stick, just for transporting, not for actual usage. Put them onto the device you're trying to use, install them properly, and then you should be able to sign with your password, no problem. So I recommend IdenTrust for those main reasons, alongside the second biggest reason, which is we've contacted them for help many times. They've been really helpful, and they gave me my third-party signature for use for basically presentations and webinars just like this. So I've had mine for a little while, and I'm very grateful to them for their help. And they seem like when it comes to third-party authentication, they know what's up, and they're very flexible with their options for how they give you those PFX files, and that makes the biggest difference.
Okay, I have three more if you want to kind of rapid fire through these. So
Let's do it.
can I generate a variable QR code for the signatures?
Not that I'm aware of, but if you use the encryption file that you get as one of the .pfx files from a company like IdenTrust, for example, you might be able to, but that is way beyond my expertise. So I don't believe you can.
Okay, perfect. When stamping individual files, it's important to the architect that the set is considered as such. No single page represents the project. Is there a way to protect the folder or at least alert that some files might be missing?
That would have to do with Windows security permissions for folders. I believe that you can have folders that, if anything changes in there, first of all, you can prevent changes, I'm assuming. And second of all, yes, you can make sure that there's a log. So all of that is Windows-based. That doesn't really have to do with Bluebeam Revu, but yes, that should be possible as long as you consult with an IT specialist that knows how to set it up for you.
Okay, last one. If somebody views a digitally signed file, then does a save as, can this be prevented or at least can the author be notified?
The author will not be notified. No, it doesn't. It's not like an internet connection is constantly being used. You don't really need internet necessarily for signatures. You just need to establish a connection between the signature file and the computer itself. To do a save as with a signed file, most of the time you're not really able to. I'm going to go to the batch file just to show you really quickly that here, yes, a save as can happen. But if I do this, the signature shouldn't really exist. So let's just make this, underscore saved as, and let's see what it looks like really quickly. there. So, okay, so yes, you can make a copy of the file. Yes, I mean, you can have multiple copies of the same signed file. And save as is fine. If you want to prevent that, you can prevent that in your security settings that I talked about earlier. So just make sure that you go into those security settings and prevent people from saving. That should be a big help. Just to remind you, document, security, change permissions, and then require a password to print, copy, or edit. So let's see, changes is here. I believe that changes involves saving as well, but saving is a moot point because once you make a PDF that's signed and you send that in an email or you give it to somebody, people are going to have multiple copies, period. I mean, copies are inevitable, but the copy itself doesn't matter. What matters is that your signed data cannot really be changed and it'll always be secure. But yes, good question. And you can contact us if you wanted to discuss that in more in depth and to make sure that your files are ready to go.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that quick one. And let's jump over to that last slide, please. Okay, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Ari, for the presentation. Just a couple little last points here. Our blog is live. You can check it out at the URL there on the screen. Bluebeam Revu training is available. Like I mentioned, contact us using the contact info on screen. At ddscad.com, you can click on events on the menu to see upcoming webinars. You can also actually see recent event or webinar videos there as well. And you can email us at info@ddscad.com or call us at 305-445-6480. Last thing I do want to quickly mention here is that if you're interested in some sort of lunch and learn presentation regarding Bluebeam Revu or one of the other products that we provide here at DDSCAD, go ahead and reach out to us using those same email and phone number that we mentioned. We are able to host those, and we'd love to get a discussion going around those topics with your company. Okay, thank you all so much for being here, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.